Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and I'd like to welcome you to a series of fascinating videos that I'm making over the next few months about the village of Duncton in West Sussex, just south of Petworth and just north of the very impressive Duncton Hill. The village is steeped in fascinating bits of history which possibly if you were to drive down the 285 from Petworth down to Chichester, you wouldn't know that these things were there. And that's partly what I'm going to explore. I've got the help today of John Mays, who's going to take me around, and we're going to have a quick look at the village in broad terms. Now you may have noticed I am standing in a churchyard, and there is a reason for that. But first, let me introduce you to John Mays. Hello, John.
Richard, hello.
It's lovely to meet you.
Hello.
We are standing in St Mary's churchyard.
Yes.
The thing that's blatantly obvious is there's no St Mary's.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes, pulled or demolished rather in 1880, just 10 years before.
Right.
The new church at Duncton Village, Holy Trinity, was built. Yes, but this really is the heart of the old village with its church and its graveyard. Yeah.
And that's what we're really exploring today, is just a broad outline of this fascinating rural village in Sussex, in West Sussex, in lee of the South Downs. Yes,
you can see the reason really for it, because I don't know if your camera can pick up the big white house opposite, but that is sitting on the other side of a stream, a spring stream coming straight from the South Downs, which in turn made for very fertile land, so that when people moved in here, there was a soil and land that could give them a living.
And a supply of water.
When they moved in here, and that was sometime before 1080, when the Domesday Book was written, because already this church was built by that time.
Right. And we will come back, will we not? Come with me,
yes,
John.
Yes.
We will come back and explore St Mary's Church in a video all on its own. We're going to make a series of videos, and the purpose of this one is really just to introduce you to some of the interesting facets of the village. And immediately on our left, you don't necessarily know exactly what it's for. You might guess that it's a farmer's barn or something, but it has quite a significant role in the village and in history itself.
Well, it's quite right of you to identify it like that, because in its last usage was as a granary, which explains why the windows are there with those wooden slats for ventilation, but that was by no means its original intent.
Right.
So here was the village, people living on the other side of the bank, families, lots of children, not very much in the way of education.
No.
Until the church came along, and I don't mean this particular church, but the church intervened and produced and built a number of national schools for the villages.
Yes.
The aim being to have a school for every village, and this is the one for Duncton.
Gosh.
The first national school. Built somewhere in about 1820, something like that. Mrs. Price's were the two headmistresses. Just one room, a fireplace, two windows, not quite as you see them at the moment, and that looked after the education for the children.
Just up the road is what's known as Church Farm, that or it's Manor Farm now, but it may have been Church Farm, is that right?
I think it's likely that it was called Church Farm many years ago, in keeping with medieval practice.
A village like Duncton was quite lucky with these streams, I suppose, because it gave them an opportunity to have a mill.
Yes, very much so, and Duncton Mill in particular was very important because of its capacity. It always had a good waterhead and could take on a lot of corn to grind to make the flour, yes.
John.
Yes. Richard.
You've taken me what seems like half a mile or so north from St Mary's Church.
Yes, that's right.
Or at least the churchyard.
Yes.
And there's something that we haven't mentioned, is there, that's quite distinct about Duncton, and that is it's in two bits.
That's right, we haven't touched on that just yet. But the old church and its school was very much the heart of the village all those years ago. But at the same time, this part down here still existed, and they were separated by streams and valleys and things like that. Not a great distance,
Right.
but a distinctly separate part.
And the road has actually changed from the 1600s, I think.
Yes, it has. It was more or less a straight line down from the old village
Yes.
to the front of the cricketers, which we'll see in a little while.
There's a house behind us that's of some significance, isn't there?
This is certainly one of the older ones in the row of houses behind us. It's known as Lilac Cottage, and on this bit of ground records show that there were attempts made to form a brickyard because there's blue clay underneath. Well, we know there's blue clay down there because it's very awkward to deal with,
Yes.
but not enough to make it a worthwhile living. So it never took off really.
If we carry on around, we come to a much more modern estate now. This brings us a little bit more up to date, certainly for Duncton.
Very much so. By the time we get round to the 1950s, and the housing shortage was as present then as it is now, Willett Close was built, and with it it brought electricity to the village and main drainage to many parts of the village.
Gosh. There is a school, and that has some significance in Duncton, but we'll present that in one of our separate videos, shall we?
I think there's a lot of information there. It would sit best there. Yes.
So they built a new church when St Mary's fell into disuse. They built a new church. Let's go and have a look at that, shall we?
Absolutely, yes.
So John, we've moved a little further north, but not very much really, from Willett Close.
Correct, that's right.
And here is the new church.
Yes, this was the church that was built to replace the old church that we looked at that was demolished, and this was built in 1866, and there it is with its spire. And right next to it, and built at more or less the same time, the Church of England School. And the character of the buildings, I think, tells its own story.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that we haven't mentioned that's going to be a feature
Yeah.
of one of the videos coming up is that the old St Mary's Church had two bells, one of which was very, very old.
That's right, yes. And the other one, a passing bell perhaps, but the older bell was taken from that church and now is in that tower. And it's dated on the side of the bell 1369, and it now can claim to be the oldest bell inscribed in England that is actually working.
I recognise this grand building as St Michael's School, but it's much older than that, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is, and I think this is the third building on this site from quite some long time ago. But originally we're told that this was the site used for the chief's house when the village of Burton was right there in front of the house.
And this is in Burton Park.
In Burton Park, that's right.
We're obviously nearly at the end because we're stood outside a pub, John.
Good planning.
Yes. This is the Cricketers, but I gather it wasn't always the Cricketers.
No, that's right. It was called the Swan.
Right.
The Swan pub until somewhere in the late 1800s when it became the Cricketers, yes.
And it's the village pub, the only village pub, and it's sort of between the two halves of the village.
Well, or within the lower half anyway.
Right.
But very much this is the other half of Duncton as it was. And here's the pub, and they didn't have one.
Poor them.
Yes.
Well, the thing is, we're going to go in and sample its delights, but there's a lot of interesting history about the pub, not least about James Dean of Duncton, 1816 to 1888, but 81 rather. But we'll tell you about him and all the other histories in our wonderful videos that we're going to make. John, thank you so much for giving us
Richard,
a précis
been a pleasure.
of Duncton. And these will come out over the next coming months, so look out for them. In the meantime, thanks for watching, take care, and mine's a swift pint, please.